Arches National Park has one main road through it. All the front country sites and trailheads are along the Arches National Park Scenic Drive or a couple of short side roads. But before you go there, you'll want today's episode, because I'm going to share all you need to know about driving through Arches National Park. Hi, I'm James Ian, and I've written numerous guides and published several itineraries for Arches National Park. In this guide to the Arches Scenic Drive, I'm going to start by sharing all the major viewpoints along the Arches National Park Scenic Road, and then we'll take a look at some of the trips for the drive through Arches National Park. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. If you're watching or listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. Without this information, you won't know exactly what to expect, when to go, and what you need to be fully prepared. Be sure to stay to the end, where I'll be sharing my top tip for the Arches National Park Drive. Let's get started.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the national park expert. He's here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
So, what do you need to know about the scenic drive in Arches National Park? Let's start with an overview of the drive. The entrance to Arches National Park is just 5 miles from Moab, which is where most people stay. Soon after you enter the park, you'll see the visitor center on your right. After the visitor center, the road winds up a series of switchbacks to the main part of the park. The scenic drive starts after you get up to the plateau. Most of the park is visited along this one road. However, there are 2 side roads that I've included here as well. The first is to the windows section with a stop at the Garden of Eden, and the other is the Trailhead and Viewpoints for Delicate Arch. So let's take a look at all the major stops on the Arches National Park Scenic Drive. The first stop on the Scenic Drive is the Park Avenue Viewpoint and Trailhead. Soon after you get to the top of the switchbacks from the visitor center, you'll reach a small overlook, Moab Fault Overlook. Unless you really want to stop and look at every single overlook on the drive, I personally wouldn't bother with this. But soon after, which is about 2.1 miles from the visitor center, you'll come to the Park Avenue Viewpoint and Trailhead. You will definitely want to stop here. There's a decent-sized parking lot, but it does fill up. If it's full, I recommend just waiting until someone leaves. Most people don't stay too long. There's a short walk on a mostly flat, paved, accessible path from the parking lot to the viewpoint. And there are interpretive signs along the path. Park Avenue is a canyon with towering sandstone cliffs on both sides that reminded whoever named it of the skyscrapers along the sides of Park Avenue in New York City. There are no arches visible here, but the views are nonetheless stunning. You'll see Queen Nefertiti Rock on your left and Queen Victoria Rock on your right. The Courthouse towers are also on your left, much further along. The light is best for photos in the late afternoon, though the views are great any time of the day, so don't limit yourself to that. If you want to hike down into Park Avenue, you absolutely can. And the trail goes to Courthouse Towers Viewpoint. So if someone in your party doesn't want to walk and can drive, then they could actually drive there. It's a little bit further along the road and pick you up at the end so that you don't need to hike back. Of course, you can hike there and back. On the hike, you can see Baby Arch up high on the left near the end. And it's named Baby Arch because it's really small, so you may miss it. Keep an eye out for it. The second stop on the scenic drive is the Sal Mountains Viewpoint. This is just 0.3 miles, just about a minute further along the road. You'll see a turnoff on your right to the viewpoint. The viewpoint then is a short distance down this side road. There's a paved path beside the parking area. In addition to somewhat distant views of the La Salle Mountains, in the opposite direction are good views of some of the major rock formations in the Courthouse Towers area, including Three Gossips, Sheep Rock, and the Organ. To get a closer view of Courthouse Towers, there's a short path on a rocky, uneven surface, and there are landmarks on the landscape interpretive panels along there. The third stop on the scenic drive is Courthouse Towers Viewpoint. About a mile further along the main road, about 2 minutes, you'll come to a long parking lot on your right. The Courthouse Towers viewpoint is at the far end of the Park Avenue Trail, and if you want to do this hike, you could do it from the other direction, so you can hike either way. Across the road, looking back, Courthouse Towers are on your right. Looking away from Park Avenue with the main Arches Road behind you, the large rock formation on your right is the Organ. The Tower of Babel is to your left a little further along the road. The fourth stop on the Arches Scenic Drive is Petrified Dunes Viewpoint. 2.4 miles further along, about 4 minutes, there's a pull-out on the right side of the road. In the distance, you can see some petrified sand dunes. It's not the most exciting view, but it's kind of cool to think that the rounded sandstone hills that you can see used to be sand dunes. About 200 million years ago, the area was a desert, covered in sand dunes made of fine grained sand blown from the northwest. But over time, the dunes were covered in other layers of sediment, and these layers compressed the sand. Groundwater containing dissolved minerals trickled through the sand dunes below, leaving calcium carbonate that glued the grains of sands together, forming hard Navajo sandstone. Then erosion washed away the upper layers, exposing the original sand dunes now made up of hard sandstone. Pretty cool, right? The fifth stop on the Arches Scenic Drive is Balanced Rock. Now, I know the national park is called Arches, and you haven't seen any arches other than maybe Baby Arch in Park Avenue, but the next stop is also not an arch. You will get to them, I promise, but 3 miles, it's about 7 minutes from Petrified Dunes Viewpoint, you'll come to one of the most iconic features in the national park, which is Balanced Rock. This is a 128-foot, 3,600-ton rock that looks like it's balanced precariously on a pillar of sandstone. It's actually an optical illusion. The rock is, in fact, very firmly attached to its pedestal by Dewey Bridge mudstone. However, the mudstone is eroding, so eventually the rock will fall. In fact, it used to have a smaller sibling called Chip Off the Old Block, cute name, which fell in 1975 or 76. The park area is reasonably sized, but it is also very popular. You can see the rock from the parking lot or the side of the road. If you have very limited mobility, that's fine. However, there is a 0.3-mile lollipop or lasso trail that gets close to the rock and then loops around it. It looks very different from different angles, so I recommend that if you can. The trail is mostly flat and paved. There's also a picnic area nearby on the other side of the road. The sixth stop on the Arches Scenic Drive is Garden of Eden. Still not an arch. 0.2 miles after Balanced Rock, you'll come to a turnoff on the right to the windows section. So this is a whole other road. Another 1.1 miles, just about 2 minutes, down this side road, you'll see the sign for the Garden of Eden on your left. This name was made by someone with an imagination, I think, after the rocky shapes that supposedly resemble flowers and trees. You can be the judge of that. There are no trails in this area, but you can walk through the pillars to get closer. The surface is uneven and there's some elevation change. If you don't want to do that, you can enjoy the views of the rocky features from the parking lot area, which is fine. The road does a loop at the end and there are parking spots around this loop. The area is worth a quick stop, but if your time is limited and you just want to focus on the highlights, you could skip it. The seventh stop on the drive is the north window and south window and turret arch. Yay, you finally get to see arches. So continue along the windows road for about a mile and about 2 minutes until you get to the windows section. Along this section, you'll pass Elephant Butte and the Parade of the Elephants, and then at the windows arch, you will finally get to see arches. The road splits in two and becomes one-way here. It's a loop. So go off to the right. This is the upper section of the loop. And there are parking spaces about halfway along here. The trailhead to the north-south windows and turret arch is on the right from this parking lot. I recommend just grabbing the first parking spot that you see. The road loops around to the left and forms the lower section of the loop. There is additional parking there, and the trailhead to Double Arch is also along here. There's a connecting trail between the two sections of the loop. So just grab a park wherever you can, because you're going to be there a little while. And I really don't think that you need to move your vehicle from the upper to the lower parking lot. This area is extremely popular. Parking fills up. So once you find a parking spot, just keep it. There's just a 0.1 mile path connects the two upper parking lot, which is the trailhead for the windows arches and turret arch, and a lower parking lot, which is the trailhead for double arch. There are also accessible restrooms that are reached from the far end of the upper parking lot past the trailhead for the windows. There are 3 arches to see on the windows trail from the upper parking lot. It's a dirt trail, 1.1 miles round trip. It does have some steps, so it's not accessible, but it's also not that difficult if you don't have accessibility concerns. If you can hike a little, I really recommend walking to the windows and also to Double Arch. You can't see them from the parking lots, and the trails are fairly short. The trail splits. Turret Arch is to the right, and to the left are the 2 windows. The north window is the first one that you come to and the most popular, and the south window is a little further along, a little less impressive, but still worth it. Most people go back the way they came, but there is actually a primitive trail that loops behind South Window back to the parking lot if you're up for a little bit more of an adventure. The 8th stop on the Scenic Drive is Double Arch. Now, Double Arch is very cool. Not only is it a double arch, but it's also the tallest arch in the park, 112 feet tall, and the 3rd widest arch in the park, 144 feet across. To get there, it's a half a mile round-trip walk from the lower parking lot of the window section on a mostly flat, hard-packed dirt trail. It has no shade and is very hot in summer, so take water even though it's short. The 9th stop on the Arches Scenic Drive is Panorama Point. When you're ready to leave the window section, head back to the main Arches Scenic Drive road, and then when you get to the main road, turn right to continue along it. The road climbs up a hill from there, and after about 1.1 miles, about 2 minutes, you'll come to a road on the right to Panorama Point. It's a very short spur road that ends in a loop with parking along the side of the road. There are several viewpoints along the parking area and loop. From the viewpoints, there are, unsurprisingly, given its name, panoramic views of the national park and the surrounding areas. When I say panoramic, I mean distant. You can see the Sal Mountains in the distance. That area of red rocky pillars across the valley is Fiery Furnace, and you can even see parts of Devil's Garden further away slightly to the left. Because of the expansive views, this is a great place for stargazing, actually. And there's a shelter and some picnic tables there, plus a vault toilet, so it's an option for a picnic lunch. The 10th stop on the Arches Scenic Drive is Delicate Arch and Wolf Ranch. Head back to the main road and turn right to continue along the main road. It dips down into a valley and it climbs back up again. And then after 1.4 miles, about 2 minutes, you come to Delicate Arch Road. So take that, turn right, continue along for another couple of minutes, about 1.2 miles, until you arrive at the trailhead for Delicate Arch on your left. There's a large parking lot, plus some additional parking on the right side of the road. Delicate Arch is by far the most famous arch in the national park, and it's actually featured on Utah's license plate. Most arches are formed in the side of a fin with walls on both sides. Delicate Arch, however, is freestanding. In fact, it's the largest freestanding arch in the park, with an opening of 346 feet high and 32 feet wide. Very impressive, like incredible. To get to the arch itself, though, you need to hike. It's a 3-mile round-trip, moderate hike with a scary, if you're afraid of heights like I am, ledge near the end. It's wider than you think it is. I definitely recommend the hike if you can. But if not, the area is still worth visiting. You can't actually see Delicate Arch from the trailhead, but you can visit Wolf Ranch. It's a very short walk away. This is interesting. It's a very basic one-room cabin dating from 1906. And it gives you a real sense of the harsh life that the pioneers lived. And if you continue along the path, you cross a short wooden bridge. You haven't walked very far at all at this point. On the left, very soon after, is a side trail to some cool Ute petroglyphs. From there, then you can either continue along the main trail to Delicate Arch, or if you're not up for that hike, just return to the parking lot. The 11th stop on the Scenic Drive is Delicate Arch Viewpoints. If you aren't up for the hike to Delicate Arch, you can still see it. Continue along Delicate Arch Road for another mile, a couple of minutes, and you'll come to the parking lot for the Delicate Arch Viewpoints. This is the end of the paved road, and the road loops around with parking on both sides of the loops, and there's long vehicle parking in the middle. There are 2 viewpoints, but be warned, it is a distant view of the arch. It's still worth it if you don't hike to the arch itself. If you did, or you will, hike to the arch, I think you could actually skip this. It's kind of interesting to see where the arch is located in relation to its surroundings. So it does give you a sense of where you go on the hike to the arch. So maybe you want to see it for that reason. Just be prepared. It is kind of far away. The lower Delicate Arch viewpoint is very short, 200 feet, flat, very accessible. You can see the arch from there. If you have mobility issues, that's a great option. For a better, marginally closer view, you can take a half a mile round-trip trail up to the upper Delicate Arch viewpoint. This is rated as moderate, even though it's short, because you will spend most of the time climbing upstairs to get there, so it's not accessible. The next 12th stop on the Scenic Drive is Salt Valley Overlook. Head back to the main road, turn right to continue on, and another 2.3 miles along, you'll see the turn-off to the Salt Valley Overlook on your right. A very short spur road takes you to the Overlook. The road ends at a loop, and there are only 8 designated parking spots around the far side of the loop. It's not super popular though, so chances are you'll find a parking spot there. There is a panoramic view of, surprise, surprise, Salt Valley, given its name. It's not super exciting, but there are many coloured rocks and sands coloured by the ores and minerals. The geology of the area is very interesting, so I recommend learning at the visitor centre about how Salt Valley and the arches were formed. Will help give you an appreciation of what you're seeing when you're looking at Salt Valley. The lucky 13th stop on Arches Scenic Drive is the Fiery Furnace Viewpoint. Back on the main road, it's just 0.2 miles, about a minute, to the turn-off for Fiery Furnace Viewpoint. The Overlook is another 0.2 miles down this short side spur. I first assumed that Fiery Furnace area was named because it was so darn hot there, but in fact it got its name because of the sandstone rocks glow like a wood-fired furnace in the late afternoon light. So if you can visit then, you will see why it got its name, and it's kind of at its best at that point of the day. The area is a natural labyrinth with narrow passageways between tall sandstone walls. You can hike into it, but only with 2 options. One is a special backcountry permit, which I recommend only if you're comfortable navigating the labyrinth, or on a ranger-led guided hike. If you're an everyday hiker like me, I really recommend the ranger-led hike. In general, I don't like hiking in groups. I'm kind of slower than many other people, but this place really is a labyrinth, and you could really easily get lost there. Plus, the ranger gives you lots of really interesting information. The hike does require some scrambling, climbing, shimmying, so it's not for everyone. You need to have very good mobility. The view alone is worth it though, even if you don't want to go down into the furnace itself. But as I mentioned, try to be there in the late afternoon if you can to see that namesake fiery glow. The 14th stop on the Scenic Drive is Sand Dune Arch. Back on the main Scenic Road, turn right, and after 1.9 miles, about 3 minutes, you'll come to the parking area for Sand Dune Arch. The main parking area is on your right, though there is additional parking on the left side of the road. To see the arch, you will need to walk, but it's not far. The trail starts from the parking lot on the right side of the road, and then it's just 0.2 miles each way. It's a pretty cool arch to approach, actually. From the parking lot, there's a clump of rock formations ahead, slightly off to the right. You'll see them there. So that's what you're walking towards. You approach them, and then you walk through this narrow passageway in between rocks on both sides. This super narrow slot canyon then opens up into a sandy area in the middle of the rocks. You're completely surrounded by them. It's kind of like this hidden secret world that you've discovered with lots of other people. You can't see an arch when you first get there, but then around a corner to the right, you'll suddenly see this small-ish arch with a sandy deposit, somewhat euphemistically named Dune, beneath it. It's very cool though. Kids will love it because there's a sand dune like right beneath this little arch. The area is also shady most of the day, so it's a nice respite from the heat. It can get very crowded though, as the space isn't that big. This is also the start of the trail to Broken Arch and Tapestry Arch. You can also start those hikes from the other end of their loop at Devil's Garden Campground. These arches are great to see, but although the trails are mostly flat-ish, there is a lot of very soft sand to walk on, which can make hiking a little more challenging. The 15th stop on the Scenic Drive is Skyline Arch. 0.7 miles, about a minute further along the road, you'll come to Skyline Arch parking lot. There's a paved pullout on the side of the road there. You can see the arch up high near the top of a small cliff. There is an easy 0.2 mile each way trail that goes to the base of the cliffs. If you do this short hike, you'll see huge boulders at the base of the cliff when you get to the end of the trail. Until 1940, half of this arch was blocked, but in 1940, that blocked half fell away, leaving the full arch and this bunch of huge boulders at the bottom that you can now see. It's kind of cool. The 16th stop on the Scenic Drive is Devil's Garden. Continue along the road for another 1.3 miles and you'll come to a split in the road and it becomes one way. This is the start of a loop that is the end of the road. Continue around to the right and you'll soon pass the Devil's Garden picnic area and then the turn off to the Devil's Garden campground, where you'll also find the other trailhead for Tapestry and Broken Arch and Sand Dune Arch, although it's a much shorter walk from the Sand Dune Arch parking area. 0.4 miles from where the road splits, you'll come to the start of the Devil's Garden parking area. There are plenty of parking spaces around this end of the loop, but it is a popular part of the park, and the parking lot, even though it's pretty large, does fill up. So I recommend getting there earlier if possible. There are restrooms here too. There isn't a whole lot to see from the parking lot. To see any arches, you do need to walk. The Devil's Garden area has 3 connected trails. From the parking lot, walk between tall fins into Devil's Garden. And it's an easy 0.8 mile walk each way to Landscape Arch. This arch is 306 feet long, and it's the longest single fan arch in North America and the 3rd longest natural arch in the world. The first 2 are both in China. Along the way, you'll pass a short side trail that takes you to Pine Tree Arch and Tunnel Arch, worth a look. To see more arches after that, then you'll need to head up along the top of a fin, and you can see Navajo, Partition, and 00 arches in that section. And then you can return the way you came or continue on a primitive trail that goes through Fin Canyon back to the main trail. I highly recommend that if you're up for it. And that is the last stop on the drive, but we have more to talk about. Before we look at some really important tips for the drive, if you're watching this on my @National Parks YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. Next up are some important practical things to know about the Scenic Drive in Arches National Park. Some practical things. Drive time. The entire drive, including the side roads, is 46 miles out and back. You can drive it straight through and back in about 2 hours without stopping. I don't know why you'd want to do that though. You'll want to stop and enjoy the sights, of course. So to allow for short stops at each of the viewpoints, you should allow 4 to 5 hours. This is without any hiking. If you're not a hiker, you just want to see what you can from your vehicle, 5 hours is probably enough. However, if you can, you should definitely add in the hikes because that's where you'll see a lot of arches. If you have mobility issues, of course, then just doing the Scenic Drive and enjoying all the viewpoints is definitely worth it. Absolutely do it. Go for it. However, if you can, I do recommend doing the hikes. There are several short and easy hikes, plus some that are longer and more challenging. Third, where can you eat along the Arches Scenic Drive? Basically, short answer, nowhere. There are no restaurants, cafes, or shops inside the park at all. The only accommodation is the primitive campground at Devil's Garden at the far end of the road, and there is no camp shop there. So unless you want to drive out of the park for lunch and back in, which I don't recommend, you'll want to have food with you. Pack a picnic lunch. There are designated picnic areas across from Balanced Rock, at Devil's Garden, at the Delicate Arch Viewpoint, and at the Visitors Center. Next, if you're wondering what to take on the drive, my main recommendation is food and water, of course. The national park gets really hot in summer. You'll stay cool in your vehicle, but whenever you get out to enjoy the views, you will be exposed to the elements. So drink plenty of water. And of course, always be sun safe. The next thing is really important, and that is parking. You'd think that having a timed entry permit would mean that you'll be able to get a parking spot at any of the stops on the Scenic Drive. Not so much necessarily. The timed entry has definitely helped eliminate or at least reduce long lines to get in, but parking at many of the overlooks, and especially those that are also trailheads, is still limited and often fills up. Now, I've described the drive in the order that you'll come to everything as you drive from the entrance to the end of the road. However, you don't have to do everything in this order, and in fact, I don't recommend it. If you plan to do any hiking, you'll want to mix up the order so that you can time your hikes with parking spaces, the sun, etc. Timing is really important. I strongly recommend checking out my itineraries. I created a 1-day itinerary and a 2 to 3 day itinerary for Arches National Park. They're very detailed and they're very carefully timed to minimize the possibility of waiting for parking spots. You can find the link at the top of the description box below, but just a very quick overview. They start with a park overview, and then there's a detailed schedule for each day with an hour-by-hour breakdown. And then for each activity on the schedule, there's all sorts of details with hiking descriptions, driving descriptions, and maps. There are alternative activities in the same part of the park if you're traveling with people who want to do different things. There's tips, timings, and more. With one of these itineraries, you'll know exactly what to do and when and how to connect them all in a way that makes the most sense so that you're in the right place at the right time and you don't need to stress about parking or missing out on something. Without this itinerary, people often find themselves struggling to coordinate their time, to be in the right place at the right time, to see and do all that they want to do in the time that they have available. The itineraries will help take away the overwhelm and give you all the information that you need in one spot so that you don't need to worry about missing out on the highlights of the park or stress about how to put everything together into a schedule that makes the most sense. And you can just follow a link in the show notes below. Now, as promised, what's my final tip for the scenic drive in Arches National Park? This applies to the whole park, but it's important to know, and that is that there are timed entry permits required for some of the year. Driving Arches National Park used to be a nightmare with really long lines to get in that went all the way to the highway. To reduce traffic congestion, the National Park Service has implemented a timed entry system into Arches National Park for the peak months during the peak times. If you want to enter the park at these times, you will need to get a timed entry permit. The times and dates have been changing each year, so check the National Park website for the latest, and there's a link below. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources there that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national park vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.